This is the single worst age to claim Social Security. Or is it? If you have been told that age 64 is statistically the single worst age to claim Social Security, I need you to stop and listen carefully, because that claim is being repeated across financial media right now. It sounds authoritative. It sounds like it comes from real research, and it is causing seniors to make permanent decisions based on information that is simply not accurate. I have gone through the actual study that is being cited to back up this claim. All of it. And what the study actually says and what people are claiming it says are two completely different things. Today we are going to go through the real math behind Social Security claiming ages, what the research actually found, and most importantly, a clear, practical framework for figuring out the right age for you specifically. Because there is no single worst age that applies to everyone. And by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly how to think about this decision for your own situation. Let us start with the math that is real, because there is genuine substance here. If your full retirement age is 67, which applies to most people watching this, and you claim Social Security at 62, the earliest possible age, your monthly benefit is permanently reduced to 70% of your full benefit. At 63, you receive 75%. At 64, you receive 80%. At 65, you receive approximately 86.7%. At 66, approximately 93.3%. And at 67, you receive 100%. Now here is the one legitimate point that sparked the worst age claim. The jump between 64 and 65 is 6.7 percentage points, which is actually larger than the jump between 63 and 64, which is only 5 percentage points. So if you claim at 64, you have already passed the earlier claiming ages, but you are still far from full retirement age. And waiting just one more year to 65 would have given you a bigger gain than the year you just finished. That penalty structure is real. But that mathematical quirk is a very long way from saying 64 is objectively the worst age to claim. Making that leap requires ignoring everything that actually makes this decision complicated: your health, your savings, your spouse, and your real-life financial needs. Now let us look at what the actual research says, because this is where the mainstream coverage went completely off track. A research paper analyzed approximately 2,000 real American households using decades of data from a long-running retirement study. The researchers ran an enormous number of financial simulations, in some cases close to 500,000 scenarios per household, to identify which claiming age would produce the best long-term financial outcome for each specific household. The findings were significant. The study found that only 4% of retirees claim Social Security at the financially optimal time for their situation. It found that approximately 57% of retirees would have built more total wealth over their lifetime if they had waited until age 70 to claim. And it found that only 6.5% of retirees would actually have been better off claiming before age 64, while over 70% of people are currently claiming that early. So yes, the research is clearly saying that most Americans are claiming Social Security earlier than is financially optimal for them. That is a real and important finding. But nowhere in that research, not once, not anywhere, does it say that 64 is the single worst age to claim. What it identifies is a broad pattern of early claiming that does not match what produces the best long-term outcomes for most households. That is a fundamentally different conclusion. And that difference matters when seniors are making permanent, irreversible decisions. There's also a critical assumption inside that research that almost nobody mentions when they cite it, and it changes the conclusion significantly for a large number of people. The study assumed that anyone who delayed claiming Social Security funded that gap period by drawing down their investment portfolio. The researchers themselves acknowledged in the paper that this assumption builds in a structural bias that makes delayed claiming look more favorable than it actually is in real life, especially for households that do not have substantial savings to draw on during the waiting period. And the paper included one of the most honest lines I have read in any financial research. It noted that 99% of households that followed the optimal delayed claiming strategy saw a reduction in their total wealth during their 60s. Almost every household that followed the strategy the study called optimal watched their account balances decline for years before the strategy paid off. The paper acknowledged the psychological difficulty of this, and that matters because retirement planning is not just a math problem. It is a human problem, and a strategy that is technically optimal on a spreadsheet but psychologically unsustainable in real life, is not actually optimal for the person living it. Before we get into the practical framework, I want to take 30 seconds to explain why this type of analysis matters so much right now. Financial headlines move fast. Studies get cited, conclusions get spread, and by the time the correction comes out, millions of people have already made decisions based on the original headline. This channel goes through the actual research, the actual rules, the actual numbers, and gives you the straight picture every single day. The people who watch regularly are consistently better informed and better positioned than the ones who rely on headlines alone. Subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell because Social Security rules, IRS updates, and bank policy changes are happening constantly, and you want to know about them before they affect your check. Now let us get into what actually helps you. A clear framework for thinking about your own claiming age. There are 3 scenarios worth understanding. The first is where claiming early, at 62, 63, or 64, genuinely makes the most sense for your situation. If you have retired and your savings are modest, claiming early can dramatically reduce the pressure you are putting on your investment portfolio. Instead of drawing $40,000 a year from a $350,000 portfolio, which is an 11 to 12% withdrawal rate that could seriously damage your long-term financial security, you might only need to draw $22,000 from that same portfolio if your Social Security check is covering the rest of your expenses. That is a much more manageable withdrawal rate. It gives your portfolio a better chance of surviving a poor-performing market in those early years of retirement, which is exactly when a market downturn causes the most lasting damage to a retirement account. Claiming early also makes clear sense if your health outlook or your family history of longevity suggests you may not reach the mathematical break-even point, which typically falls somewhere in the late 70s to early 80s, depending on your specific benefit amount. The second scenario is where claiming at or near your full retirement age makes the most sense. If you have stepped away from work at 65 or 66 and your savings can comfortably support you through 67 without significant financial strain, claiming at full retirement age gets you your complete benefit without requiring you to fund a multi-year bridge period. It is also the right choice if your health outlook is genuinely uncertain, not clearly excellent, and not clearly poor, and you want to avoid making a heavy bet in either direction. Full retirement age is the balanced middle ground. It does not require you to be confident about how long you will live in order to feel good about the decision. And for people who simply want clarity and simplicity, who want to retire, start their benefit, and not manage a complex multi-year strategy, full retirement age is a completely rational and well-supported choice. The third scenario is where delaying to age 70 produces the strongest outcome. Every year you delay claiming Social Security beyond your full retirement age, your monthly benefit grows by 8%, guaranteed, inflation adjusted, for the rest of your life. Going from a $2,000 monthly benefit at full retirement age to a $2,480 benefit at 70 is a significant and permanent increase. This approach makes the most sense if you are in genuinely good health with a family history of above-average longevity. It makes the most sense if you have a substantial portfolio or other reliable income sources, a pension, rental income, a working spouse that can fund the gap years without putting your savings at risk. And it makes particular sense for the higher-earning spouse in a married couple. When that spouse eventually passes, the surviving spouse steps into the higher benefit and receives it for the rest of their life. The survivor benefit calculation means that delaying the higher earner's claim is not just about maximizing one person's income. It is about protecting the long-term financial security of the spouse who lives the longest. For married couples, a staggered approach, where the lower-earning spouse claims earlier while the higher-earning spouse delays, is frequently the most effective overall strategy. It brings household income in sooner, reduces the gap period that needs to be funded, and maximizes the survivor benefit that will eventually support whichever spouse remains. Here is the straight answer. There is no universally worst age to claim Social Security. There is an age that fits your life and an age that does not. And figuring out which is which starts with one question. What problem are you trying to solve? If you need income now because your savings are limited or your health is uncertain, claiming earlier may genuinely improve your long-term outcome by protecting your portfolio from an unsustainable withdrawal rate. If you want to maximize your total lifetime benefit and you have the health and the assets to support a delay strategy without financial stress, Waiting to 70 has real and well-documented benefits, especially for the higher-earning spouse in a married couple. And if you are somewhere in the middle, reasonably healthy, savings that can support you through full retirement age without strain, and you want a straightforward decision, full retirement age is a rational and completely defensible choice. The real takeaway from all the research on this topic is not that any specific age is objectively the worst. It is that this is a deeply personal decision that depends entirely on your specific health, your specific savings, your specific household income needs, and your specific life. Anyone who tells you otherwise has not looked at the full picture. If this video gave you a clearer way to think about this decision, please share it right now with someone you know who is approaching the age where Social Security claiming becomes a real question. A parent, a spouse, a friend who deserves a straight answer instead of a fear-based headline. Subscribe to Mason Parker USA, turn on the notification bell, and we will see you in the next video. There is one more piece of this conversation that deserves a direct and honest answer, and it is the piece that gets glossed over most often in financial media coverage of Social Security claiming. Surveys consistently find that somewhere between 38 and 40% of retirees who claim Social Security before their full retirement age say they wish they had waited longer. That is a real number, and it is worth taking seriously. But regret does not automatically mean the decision was wrong. The same surveys that capture that regret also consistently find that the majority of early claimers did so because of genuine financial necessity, job loss, a health diagnosis, a spouse's situation, savings that simply could not support a longer delay. Those are not mistakes. Those are real-life constraints that do not show up cleanly in a financial optimization model. A decision made under real financial pressure that kept a household stable and fed and housed is not the same as a decision made out of ignorance. And treating those two things as equivalent, which is exactly what fear-based headlines tend to do, does a real disservice to the millions of seniors who made the best decision available to them given the circumstances they were actually living in. It is also worth understanding what happens to your Social Security benefit if you keep working past your full retirement age while also delaying your claim. This is a combination that works extremely well for a specific group of seniors and almost never gets covered clearly. If you are still working between 67 and 70, even part-time, even in a reduced capacity, you are continuing to add to your earnings record, and because your Social Security benefit is calculated using your highest 35 years of earnings, any year of continued work that replaces a lower earning year from earlier in your career can directly increase your monthly benefit, on top of the 8% annual delayed claiming credit you are already accumulating. So for seniors who are healthy enough to work, who enjoy their work, or who are in a position where part-time income is available and manageable, the combination of continued earnings plus delayed claiming is one of the most powerful financial strategies available in the entire retirement planning toolkit. It does not require a large portfolio. It does not require a complex investment strategy. It just requires staying active in some form of paid work while letting your Social Security benefit continue to grow. And the result, a higher benefit calculated on a stronger earnings record, multiplied by the delayed claiming credit, can be significantly larger than most people realize. One final point that is worth making clearly before we close, because it applies to a large number of the people watching this, and it changes the entire claiming equation. If you are divorced and your marriage lasted at least 10 years, you may be entitled to claim Social Security benefits based on your former spouse's earnings record rather than your own, even if your former spouse has remarried. The benefit available to you as a divorced spouse is up to 50% of your former spouse's full retirement age benefit. And here's the part most people do not know. Claiming the divorced spouse benefit does not reduce your former spouse's benefit in any way. It does not affect their check. It does not require their cooperation or even their knowledge. It is a benefit the Social Security Administration makes available specifically to divorced spouses who meet the eligibility requirements, and it is one of the most consistently overlooked benefits in the entire Social Security system. If your own earnings record would produce a smaller benefit than 50% of your former spouse's full benefit, claiming on their record instead of your own could meaningfully increase your monthly check for the rest of your life. It is worth calling the SSA directly at 1-800-772-1213 and asking them to calculate both numbers side by side so you can see exactly which option produces the higher benefit for your specific situation.